welcome. I'm your host, Henri Arslanian, and welcome to this episode of the Future of Money podcast. Before we start, I want to say a big thank you to the 500,000 of you who are following my content each week. This podcast, The Future of Money, is now ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally on Spotify. Thousands of you from over 160 countries are tuning in each week, so massive thank you for all your support. As all you loyal listeners know, my goal with this podcast is very simple. It's to go deep in some of the biggest ideas, trends, and developments we are seeing in the field of crypto, and hopefully empower you with this information and then let you make your own decision on what their impact could be on the future of money and finance. To do this, I invite each week one of the leading figures of the global crypto community to have a one-on-one conversation amongst crypto aficionados and discuss some of these topics. My guest today is Stefan Kimmel. He's the CEO of M2. And we're going to talk a lot about the crypto exchange landscape, especially what's happening in the Middle East, but also how do you differentiate yourself as an exchange and how can you make your exchange different in this competitive market? Stefan, great to have you with us on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Henry. Great to be here. Honored to be invited on the show.
By the way, one fun fact people may not know about Stefan, he was actually living in Atlanta during the Centennial bombing, where he was exchange student and doing his MBA at UGA. So not to give your age away, Stefan, but here we go. Not many German students spent time in the US and let alone in Atlanta during that time.
Yeah, that was great. It was a wonderful time. Great fond memories of it.
So, Stefan, before we dive into really the M2 and the exchange, do you mind sharing with the audience a bit more about yourself? Because you have a very interesting background. And also then share what is M2 and what does M2 do?
Sure. Yeah, look, my background is actually more a traditional TradFi kind of a background. I was working in consulting for many years for BCG and then for Oliver Wyman, always involved in digital transformation, essentially thinking about how to use technology to provide better products, better services to customers. So that was always the sweet spot. And naturally, then I was in IT services, an IT service provider with IBM, and finally PwC, where you and I met as well, as former colleagues, always with the same focus on using technology to provide better products, better service to customers. And as you work in that space, naturally, when crypto came about, it was a natural transition point for me. I got involved originally still in the IBM days in a CBDC here in the Middle East. It was actually the first cross-country CBDC between Saudi and the UAE, and then gradually got more into the space. I was in the end, my last stint in traditional finance was the CEO of Commercial Bank of Dubai, one of the local banks here in the UAE. And then got recruited into Kraken, where I headed up the Middle Eastern unit for a while, and finally had the opportunity to launch M2, which I've been doing for the last year and a half.
So let's talk about that, because I think it's very interesting, your journey as a consultant, when it's very easy to go and give an opinion and feedback to all these corporates and then doing it in-house. It's obviously a very different ballgame. Can you share maybe more for audience about M2? What does M2 do? What makes M2 unique as a crypto platform?
Okay, look, we do a couple of things. One is we are at the core an exchange. So anything around buying, selling crypto. We have spot, futures trading, OTC, margin trading. We are predominantly based in the UAE and ADGM. That's where we regulate and have 3 different licenses. With further licenses in the Bahamas, and we're about to roll out additional licenses internationally now. Next one on the list is Spain, where we merge into the MiCA space. And that's really one of the foundational pillars. Everything we do, we want to be compliant, secure, transparent. And I think that's where the industry is headed in terms of the next generation or the next phase of exchanges. It has to be compliant, it has to be safe. That's the foundation of everything we do. On top of that, we see as our main differentiator above and beyond the pure trading of it is the investment side. So our starting product in that space is our earn plans. So for instance, we're currently offering a 10.5% yield on Bitcoin for Bitcoin deposit earn plans, or up to 10.5%, I should say, depending on duration. We do the same on ETH, to up to 10.5% on ETH, 11.5% on USDT. So that's really the sweet spot. It's also addressing a market that's not only into trading, getting in and out fast, but to an audience or to investors who like to hold on to the assets, keep them on a safe platform and make extra yield on it. That's really our sweet spot. and we expanding that. I mean, that's the launching or the starting proposition as we launched is the earn plans. We're getting to mutual fund type products, structured product, principal protected products. That's all on the roadmap for the next 3 to 6 months.
So you just mentioned, 9 to 10.5% yield on Bitcoin. Can you share with our audience where does that yield come from? Because obviously,
Yeah.
it's not as if you can stake like ETH or there's inherent embedded yield in it. Can you maybe share with us where you guys are getting this yield, a part of just VC funding and paying for it as a customer acquisition cost?
No, it's not coming from the marketing budget. So it's something that we plan to be sustainable, and we want to keep that in the long run. But look, there's 4 legs we have for generating the yields. The first one is actually Bitcoin mining. We're partially owned by Phoenix Group. It's a publicly listed company here in the UAE and one of the largest miners in the world. So we deploy some of the funds in mining, and that obviously easily generates the yields we need to have. The second, and that's the other big dominant part of it, is we have our in-house asset management team that does market making and delta neutral strategies across exchanges, up strategies as well. And that's the second big leg that generates that yield. Third one is we also do crypto lending, fully collateralized on-platform lending. And the fourth one, that's for the POS protocols, we also stake. But the high yields we're just discussing come predominantly from the first 3 legs.
Interesting. And what's your, how do you manage to, one of the big, not concerns, but it's a complaint over the last couple of years with other crypto exchanges was that, okay, it's great you have this product, but if you have an in-house team that is trading, especially if they're market making and doing other type of activities, there's a risk of conflicts with the clients as well. How you guys at M2 dealt with this situation and this potential conflict of interest situation?
We can't trade on our own exchange. I mean, so we're not trading against our customers, or we can't front run or wash trade on our own exchange. Actually, the regulator here in the UAE is extremely strict about that. And I wouldn't even say extremely strict. They enforce good market practices. We should not trade against our customers. So any trading, we do it on third parties.
Yeah, okay, that which makes more sense on that side. You also mentioned that obviously you guys are looking at MiCA and you're looking at getting a license in Europe as well. Obviously, you're based in the UAE. Maybe from your perspective, what is the potential for a non-EU based crypto exchange of MiCA licensing and potentially the European market? Is that, you think, a game changer when it comes to MiCA, or your thing is just going to create a bubble of its own of European exchanges targeting European customers for European focused trading?
That's a very good question. I've been talking a lot to European exchanges, and obviously the trading volumes in Europe, just from a trading perspective, is not as exciting as some other markets. I think the Asian markets and others are much more into trading. Same as Latin America, Turkey, they're more active traders. I think the European mindset is a bit more of a long-term investment, more conservative approach to this whole thing. That's actually one of the aspects why Europe is very attractive or interesting for us. And a lot of the conversations I have with some of the bigger European exchanges is even to work together on an earn plan, because we have those earn plans that not many others have. They're market leading yields, and we're thinking about partnering for the distribution of that into Europe. But we're also looking at going there ourselves and offering them there. So from a pure trading perspective, difficult. Stable coins with some of the new market regulation that's coming up in Europe, also difficult. Investment yield products, a lot more interesting, I think.
And from an exchange perspective, a big part of your focus is the Middle East. How do you guys see the average or mass affluent Middle Eastern crypto investor? And how is it different, in your opinion, with crypto investors in other markets?
So, as you said, I mean, the Middle East has a good portion of that layer of mass affluent, high net worth or ultra high net worth, probably a higher proportion than many of the other markets out there. So that's very interesting. And of course, you have the full spectrum from very conservative to very aggressive, like in the other markets. But I think by and large, it's probably less ultra high frequency trading than let's say, or aggressive trading than again the Asian markets. It's not as conservative as perhaps the European markets. I see it somewhere in the middle, somewhere in between. And again, I think that's that fits quite nice with our offering, because we really have both. We have the offering for trading, but also for the more longer term investment. So again, I think for us it's quite a good fit.
And what's your view on the future of let's focus on the UAE, because obviously you're based here in Abu Dhabi. What's your view on the future of the UAE as a crypto hub? You know, we had many guests over the last couple of months. We had various of the regulators actually, both from VARA, from ADGM, and even the FSA is about to be a guest on the show as well, where we see a lot of them actually working on the UAE and making it a global hub. I mean, from your perspective, like you mentioned, you're getting a license in Spain, you have a license in the Bahamas, and you have the one in Abu Dhabi here. What do you think is the future of the UAE as a global crypto hub? Do you think it's happening, or you think it's a lot of hype and smoke and mirrors?
Look, had you asked me that a year ago, I would have probably said it's still a lot of hype and smoky mirrors, frankly speaking. But all the development I've seen now over the last year, I've seen so many projects and players and OGs moving to the region simply because they fed up with anti-crypto, difficult crypto, unclear crypto environments in certain other jurisdictions, including the US, of course. It's one of the biggest capital markets, or the biggest capital market, coming to the UAE, and it's for different reasons. I mean, one obvious is if you can choose where you work, which in crypto sometimes you can. A no tax, no income tax jurisdiction is interesting for obvious reasons, but it's more importantly, it's the overall positive government attitude towards crypto. We have in Dubai, in the UAE, and in Abu Dhabi, and you mentioned the FSA, several regulators. They're very pro crypto. You have a central bank that supports it, a government that supports it. They're putting investment there. They're creating the regulation. The ADGM has the oldest crypto regulation in the world, one of the most reputable regulations as well. If we go with our license to European countries and to other regulators, can almost passport it because it's so highly regarded. It's a strict one. It's a tough one, but it's very highly regarded. But I think that really comes or adds up to an ecosystem that is extremely positive. And now with the latest news of getting off the grey list for the country, it's another massive step upward that makes finding counterparties and build an ecosystem even easier than before.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well. Like similar to you, I've just been seeing the level of activity across regulators, not only the central bank, but all the different regulators, the government bodies, policy. It's very impressive, actually. It shows you that the good old adage of build it and they will come really works sometimes. Which is quite impressive. So talking about the ecosystem, Stefan, is you were there from the start of M2, right? And you, like I mentioned before, you were a consultant. You've been involved in digital quote unquote space for a while. What is the most difficult thing when it comes to building a crypto exchange from scratch, based on your experience? And what is the most difficult part that people underestimate when when you embark upon this journey of building M2?
Yeah, it's funny because I literally started out with a phone in my hand and started to call people and say, let's build something together. So it's actually it's an unbelievable journey over the last almost 2 years now. Look, I think what most people underestimate is building an exchange that's robust and that's secure and that meets all the regulatory requirements. And it's not just meeting the regulatory requirements for its own sake, but really having the safeguards in place, the transparency, the security in place that investors expect. That is much, much, much harder than just building a trading functionality. Trading functionality you can pretty much buy off the shelf. You whip it up in 3 months, not a problem. But really building an institutional grade, robust, secure platform, that is a lot of effort. And then getting that obviously through the regulatory process is something most people underestimate. I certainly underestimated. I thought we could do it faster. And then the other, I think, tricky part that just takes time again is the fiat on and off ramps. I think everybody in crypto globally that I talk to at least sings the same song on that one. It's a tough one. It's gotten harder. I think over the last year, we think we cracked it now, but it's definitely a hard pit to solve.
I don't know if you can share with our audience how you think you've cracked it, the fiat banking problem. I don't know if this is something you guys can share with the audience or still under wraps.
It's still under wraps. I'm super eager to share it. It'll be very soon. You'll
Good.
be the first one. I call you, and you'll be the first one to know.
Good. Looking forward to the exclusive here on the Future of Money podcast. But actually, more generally about that issue, right, Stefan? Because, whenever, even when I look at 2024 and I look at some of the big challenges that we have ahead as an ecosystem, I would argue that fiat on-off ramp, especially from banks, is definitely in top three problems or potential issues we can have that can negatively affect the industry. To what extent do you think that is uh, even existential problem to crypto, the fiat on off ramp, or you think that they will always be a way and this problem will be solved in different ways?
Look, there's obviously also a niche or space or an ecosystem for players that don't have any fiat on and off ramps, right? And big chunks of the DeFi space don't necessarily need to have that. And there's a market for that. But I think if you're really talking mass adoption and rolling out the crypto to your aunts and brothers and family and the wider space and everybody out there getting access to crypto, I think the two things that need to be in place is convenience and ease of use. It can't be too hard or difficult to do. It needs to be easier, at least as easy, hopefully easier than a bank account. But the other part is you just need to get your money in and out. And as long as you can't pay everywhere with crypto, which is another approach to that problem, you just need to find easy on and off ramps. It's essential.
But even now, I would argue, even if you're looking at DeFi, yes, the everyday day-to-day usage of DeFi, you don't need a on and off ramp. But there's that entry point, the initial entry point, and at the end exit point of your gains, which is still a challenge. And let's just hope this doesn't blow out or doesn't become a bigger issue for the ecosystem, frankly. But no, I hear where you're coming from. I mean, and then obviously you talked about, obviously you need to build an exchange that is robust, regulatory, compliant, and that obviously is solid, right? But based on those requirements, do you think sometimes the crypto companies are treated unfairly? So, for example, you can go buy, even like where we are in the Middle East, you can go buy jewelry and nobody does any KYC. You can buy real estate to a certain extent, and there's, let's say, more relaxed rules around KYC, in particular source of funds, pretty much around the world now. But when it comes to actually crypto, do you think that the crypto companies are held at a different standard and are kind of unfairly being treated by, let's say, some of the traditional financial players?
That's a good question. I think, look, to be honest, the rules that apply, let's just take banks and crypto players in that space are actually quite similar. They're not too different. I mean, the compliance requirements, AML, counter-terror regulation in traditional banks is also drastically increased. I mean, if you look at the compliance departments in a bank 10 years ago compared to now, they probably triple or quadrupled in size. I think AML has become a much bigger problem or bigger point of attention in the global finance world across the board, not just for crypto. It's hitting crypto much later. Banks have had a lot more time to ramp up to that. You mentioned gold, real estate, yachts. I think those areas probably still. I mean, there's definitely rules out there. I mean, we all see it, but they probably are easier to circumvent than for crypto. And let's also not forget that the biggest vehicle for money laundering is still the US dollar. Let's just rub that in now, since it's usually coming the other way.
Indeed. I think that's what I found very interesting as well, because how in so many the crypto, I would argue it's some of the biggest. I mean, for full disclosure, I opened an account at M2 recently. Actually, before this interview, I always want to test the user experience, the onboarding, and actually, you guys are very stringent KYC, and
Yes.
if not equally, probably more than the banks. And I found it very interesting that actually, when it comes to crypto companies, they're often seen as high risk. But although crypto companies are able to use the latest tech technology, latest technology when it comes to compliance, and probably have better KYC, AML, and source of funds than many of the traditional financial institutions, but they're still held at this different, let's say, more high risk component, which I always find very, very interesting. But it is what it is. Actually, on the M2, I mean, like I mentioned, I opened an account, and I always like to test these different platforms, right? Would you guys, to your credit, Stefan, the user interface is actually very user friendly. The platform is actually quite easy to use. How important is the user interface, and How did you guys get to where you are on trying to build the user interface that you guys have right now at M2? Was it a retail process? You guys did design workshops? You guys listened to customers? What was the kind of the process that you guys used to come up with the product that you have right now?
It's funny you should say that. Obviously, ease of use and user-friendly user interface was at the top priority from day one. This actually, I think, of all the guys when we started out, I think the second or third person I hired is the head of UI UX, who will be listening tonight. And he's fantastic, and he's built an amazing team around him. And look, initially, because we wanted to have fast time to market, it was basically a core team of 4 or 5 guys who designed that, did the Figmas, designed all the journeys and got it up and running. And more recently, I think for the last 4 or 5 months, we've been running more and more user workshops. We've taken on board a lot of feedback. We have a very active Telegram group of people complaining if something doesn't work properly, and then we try to have fast turnaround times to improve that. You mentioned the onboarding journey. I think that's still one of our pain points. I'll be honest, and we're still looking for ways. We have some ideas on how to make that easier by tapping into government databases, pull data, of course, with user consent from those instead of having to ask for documents. So there's always ways to make it easier. But it's a never-ending journey. You need a good team to start with, and then just take on board all feedback and constantly put a high effort and make this a real attention point on an ongoing basis. I think that's the key.
And when you talk up to your customers and you do this old school consultant approach of listening to the voice of the customer, right? And there's between user interface, fees, and regulatory compliance. What do you think is more important for the customers? Let's start from the Middle East or some of the research you guys have done. What do you think is a bigger factor in why a certain client is using a certain platform, in your experience?
Interesting. It depends on the user group. If you talk to institutions, family offices, the first and by far foremost question by a huge margin is compliance. Like sometimes the first half hour of a conversation is only how you compliant, how you secure, how can I trust you? Way before fees, liquidity, spreads, all those things. If you talk about mass retail, obviously the user experience and ease of use and being intuitive, it's much more important. Then you have in between, let's say the mass affluent who are more aware and conscious of fees and compare more across platforms. Then that becomes more important. And they probably look for a bit of all three. They want to have it secure, they want to have proper fees and tight spreads, and also obviously a nice user interface. So that segment in the middle probably looks for 3 things, I'd say.
Interesting. And how do you plan to differentiate yourself, right? So when a customer comes, for example, today, the UAE is a very good example where you have over a dozen now of licensed, regulated global brands. How do you differentiate M2? Is it a brand adoption? Is it marketing? Is it UI compliance? Or what do you think is the strategy from your side to differentiate from some of the bigger players in the market?
So one element is to be regulated and secure here. That's a big part of the proposition. Again, more important to the institutional and family office space than it is for others. The second aspect for us is the earn and investment side of it, above and beyond the pure exchange. We just try to offer market leading yields on whatever we do. So if you have assets, you have investment assets to invest. You want to earn a good yield on a secure platform. That's kind of a sweet spot.
Interesting. I have to say, yeah, that's what probably sets you apart as well. You're right, of other platforms when you look at yours. One other thing, Stefan, I want to get your views on is the human capital element. I've had on my show dozens of CEOs of crypto companies over the years, and one of the most interesting things that I find in the crypto industry is the people in it. I've been saying now the last couple of weeks, whoever was working in crypto the last year is probably going to work in crypto for the next decade or so, right? I mean, if you're crazy enough to stay in this industry after the collapse of FTX and others, you're going to be in it for a while. From your perspective as a CEO, what are you looking for when you're hiring somebody? What are the traits that you're looking for anybody that comes and applies for a job at M2?
Yeah, look, the obvious ones. I'd like for somebody to have passion for the space, want to be, take ownership and engagement. So somebody who's proactive, who wants to take on a task, run with it, and perform and show something that's great, and somebody who's keen, especially since we're still a young enterprise, right? Somebody who wants to join, build something, create something new, and has excitement about that. That's the obvious traits. I think the other aspect to that is still, it's not just the individual, it's the mix of the team, right? We want to make sure, and you see that on the leadership team, and it runs through the rest of the organization. We have this mix of crypto native guys who've grown up in crypto, whose first job was in crypto, and who are real techie, who DeFi guys, who are very innovative, who always want to try the next best cool thing, because we need that innovation. That's so essential and core to the space. But you also need to pair that, especially after the experience of the last 2 years, with the guys, who have the experience, who've lived through global financial crisis, who've been lying bleeding in the trenches when the market really, drops and collapses, and how to build something that actually is robust, that is lasting. People who really take the tough decision in risk management and say, okay, we don't take on this additional opportunity because it's overall too much risk. Also for our client, because at the end of the day, we have fiduciary duty to protect our client money more than anything else. So it's that combination of experience, of traditional market experience as well, combined with new tech, new excitement, and drive to build something new and cool.
It's interesting, Stefan, because I could have betted money. The first thing you would have said is passion. And it's very interesting because when I ask this question to all the crypto CEOs, the first thing everybody will tell me is passion. And if I ask the same question to CEO of a bank or any other business, non-crypto, I doubt the first answer will be passion. It will be expertise, experience, blah 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 blah. And I find this is what makes this industry very unique is that people really care about this element of passion, which is actually, I have to say, I agree with it. I do the same thing when I hire in this industry as well. It's very, very interesting from that perspective on it. What is your one advice? If you had, I get approached every week, Stefan, from people who are in traditional finance or consultants or non-crypto roles wanting to join the crypto industry. What's the one piece of advice you have to anybody who's not in crypto now who wants to enter the crypto space?
Well, that's a good one. I've done the plunge, right? No, I think you just have to ask yourself whether you as a person are the right person for that. And I think it probably starts with that. I mean, if you start reading up in it, and after 2 weeks you don't completely fall into the rabbit hole, you're probably not cut out for it. I was on another discussion panel yesterday where they asked me, what's the book you recommend? What's the source? What's the Bible you need to read to understand crypto? And I said, no, that there's not such a thing. You go to podcasts, you read a lot of blogs, you go on, it's a lot of research. And if you don't get sucked into that, you don't have the passion, the excitement about that, and you don't fall into the rabbit hole, and you don't know what the rabbit hole even is, you're definitely not cut out for crypto. So that passion and excitement has to be there. If you don't have that, forget crypto.
Yeah. You're 100% right. And, and I think if you're passionate and you're not in crypto, then there's beauty. You can work in this industry and actually combine your passion and your work and your living as well, which is obviously a privilege that very few in the world can claim to have. And one last question, Stefan, and I want to move then to my fire round question is you mentioned earlier that you worked on CBDCs on Project Aber, which is a project between the Central Bank of the UAE and Saudi Arabia. What's your view on the future landscape of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and what do you think the impact that can have on the broader digital asset space?
Yeah, again, a very good question. So I think most countries will continue to experiment and eventually have their CBDCs. The big question really is not a yes or no. It's really how will they be designed? Because there's obviously a lot of design elements you can choose in terms of privacy, private controls, wholesale versus retail. Most debated point, of course, is the privacy angle of it and the concerns around that. And we see some of the experiments or the prototypes, the pilots that are being run that, let's say, don't respect privacy a lot. I think it's super interesting. Also, when you can build in features like coins expiring or only being able for certain use cases, the possibilities of building something really valuable for a country are huge. As long as the governments behind it will respect certain principles, which I think Western governments are most likely to do, because the population, I hope, won't won't allow anything else. I don't think, and that's a controversial view I have, I don't think it'll have a huge impact on crypto, to be honest, because at the end of the day, the differentiating factor is not so much whether a government owned and controlled currency is on blockchain technology or on centralized technology or on any other digital technology. For most people won't even notice the difference on whether the money they have in a bank account is technically on blockchain or something else. To them, it doesn't matter. It's they see it on their app and that's it. I think it's more a matter of who controls it, and people will very much still differentiate between, is it something that they trust their government with because they want the government to run it? That's still a big, we come from a crypto world, and of course that has that ethos of you don't want the intermediary, you don't want government to look at it too closely, you want this to be independent, decentralized. The majority of people don't think like that. A lot of people, let me just be careful with that statement, a lot of people trust their government, or want at least have something that's controlled and where they don't depend on private entities or other people to run it properly. So I think CBDCs, very interesting vehicle. I don't think they per se have a huge impact on digital or on crypto adoption.
Yeah, let's see how this cohabitation happens. I agree with you. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how, especially on the privacy element. And it's going to be very interesting over the next couple of years of how countries or regions like the US or in Europe will, if they're going to look at crypto compared to other parts of the world, like most of Asia, the Middle East, who are pretty much embracing a CBDC. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how this potential solitudes come together, on that perspective. Stefan, my Bell is here with me. So my best friend, the Bell. So I'm going to ask you quick questions. I need 1 or 2 word answers, and the Bell is here to keep us honest. And we're going to go quickly through all of them. Hope you're ready.
Scary, but yes.
There you go. That's what makes it fun. Stefan, let's kick it off. What is the one thing you love the most about living in the UAE?
The weather in the winter.
There you go, like a winter.
No, the weather in the winter.
Weather in the winter, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so
which is basically a very sunny winter.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you love the most about the crypto industry?
Innovation.
What is the most difficult part of being a CEO of a crypto company?
Banking access.
You worked in banks before. If you could give one piece of advice to a bank CEO, what would it be?
Adopt crypto.
Adopt crypto. You spent many years in the consulting industry at Oliver Wyman, BCG, Accenture, and others, PwC. What is the one thing you miss the most about the consulting industry?
Having a lot of time to think deeply about a topic.
Good point. Yeah, very good point. What is the one entrepreneur in crypto or in other industries you admire the most?
I'm going to have to say Elon Musk.
Why is that? Why Elon Musk?
He's just such a rule breaker, and he revolutionized industries that were not there to be revolutionized, including space travel, which is a government-run, car manufacturing, which was so dominated by a few players. It was not obvious choices to pick, and he did it. And very controversial character, but fantastic achievements. You can't argue with the achievements, really.
Yeah, same with cars as well. Electric cars, same thing. Well, next question is linked to that. Elon Musk invites you for lunch. What is the one question that you ask him?
That's a good one. What would I ask him? What's the next industry he's going to take on?
Yeah, good one. I like it. If you were a betting man, who is Satoshi? Is a man, woman, and which country is he or she from?
I'd say he's an American man. U.S.
Yeah.
governor, U.S. citizen.
Yeah, very likely. I will agree as well. If you could go back in history, Stefan, what period of history would you would you like to go live in?
And the 70s,
Oh yeah,
great
why
party
is that?
time. It just seems if you see all the party videos and the disco and it seemed like a good time. The liberation.
Love it. Sam Bankman-Fried gives you a call from prison, I guess. What's the one thing you tell him?
Go F yourself for doing this to the industry. I mean, you threw back the industry a few years, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another good one. If you could pick one person from what existing CEO of a crypto company or somebody from the crypto industry would you want as a co-founder for a crypto business?
An existing co-founder of a
Existing CEO of a crypto company would you want as a co-founder?
I might say Brian Armstrong. Actually, I admire
Really?
what
Why
they
is
did over
that?
the last. I
Yeah,
just admire what they did over the last, I guess, 12 years now, and
yeah.
sticking to their guns when, like, so the Asian exchanges basically ran loops around them, but they stuck to their guns and to their principles, and you gotta respect that. It takes a lot of guts.
You could go back to school today. What is the one course you would take that you wish you had taken back in the day?
Well, I grew up in Germany, so I didn't have a lot of choice. We had to take all classes across, but where I would put more or pay more attention is actually history. I never paid attention to history, and I hate it now. I think it's a super interesting subject, and I regret not being more interested in it. It was all math and sports and physics and stuff.
Talking about Germany, what is your favorite thing about Germany?
Great food and Bayern Munich, of course.
Of course. And two more left. One of them is this is an interesting one. Love to get your view. Somebody comes to you for advice on which type of job he should take, as a first job out of university. One is a consulting firm. Second is a startup. Third is a bank, and last is a regulator. Which job should they take, as their first job?
Definitely not regulator. I'd say consulting is very good, or startup, probably in a technical role.
Exactly. Good one.
If you've got the technical background, you can do a lot of things.
Absolutely. Good point. And the last question, the classical question at the Future of Money podcast, that was Stefan Kimmel, the CEO of M2. Stefan, if you could have lunch or dinner with one person dead or alive, lunch or dinner with one person dead or alive, who would you have lunch or dinner with?
Genghis Khan.
Why is that?
Just another guy who was so far ahead of his time, and so it's not just his military capabilities, but the way he set up, science, communication routes. Unbelievable character.
Absolutely. Interesting. It's the first time I get that answer, actually, Stefan. I like it. Well, Stefan, thank you very much for being on the show. How can people find out more about you and M2?
Obviously, m2.com is the website. I'm on Twitter, on Telegram. You can message me. Happy to get in touch.
Excellent. That was Stefan Kimmel, the CEO of M2, guys. Thank you very much. Hope that was a useful and insightful episode of the Future of Money podcast. Make sure to also check out my YouTube page. It's all Henri Arslanian, where there's a lot of exclusive content and where you can find the video of this podcast that you're listening to. And you can see Stefan's and my facial reactions to when we were doing this fire round questions with the bell. Thank you very much, everybody. And see you guys soon for another episode of the Future Money podcast. See you guys soon.